Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by tall grass and whispering trees, there lived a young girl named Adana. She was 18 years old and lived with her mother in a small mud house with a thatched roof. Adana was curious and thoughtful, but she was often alone. People in the village hardly noticed her. She longed for something greater, something that would make her life different from everyone else's. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned orange and pink, Adana walked to the river. The water was calm, flowing gently as the wind blew across the grass. She often came there when she felt lonely. That evening she saw something unusual. A soft glow shone beneath the clear water. She bent down and found a necklace made of colorful shells. It sparkled as if it carried its own light. Her heart beat fast. She looked around, but no one was there. Slowly she picked it up. The necklace felt warm in her hand. Curiosity was stronger than fear, so she clasped it around her neck. At once, everything became silent. The crickets stopped singing. The wind still blew, but it made no sound. Even the river seemed to stop moving. Then she heard voices. Two small fish swam by and whispered to each other. "Why is this young girl wearing Malika's necklace?" Adana gasped. She could not believe what she was hearing. "Are you speaking to me?" she asked. The fish quickly swam away. Suddenly, a frog jumped onto the path in front of her. Its eyes shone in the fading light. "That necklace does not belong to you," the frog said. "Then who owns it?" Adana asked in fear. "It belongs to Malika, daughter and sovereign of the waters," the frog replied. Terrified, Adana turned and ran back to the village. When she arrived, she noticed something strange. Everyone was staring at her. Old men, women, and even children stopped to watch her as she passed. At the oil seller's stall, when she tried to pay for oil, the man pushed her money back and said, "No, Adana. For you, it is free." She grew more afraid, but before she could return home, the sound of horns filled the air. Warriors from a nearby village stormed in with spears and torches. They shouted and set the marketplace on fire. One of the warriors dragged Adana forward. "Show me your face," he demanded. Adana lifted her head. The moment the warrior looked into her eyes, silence covered the place again. His hands trembled. The other warriors lowered their weapons, staring at her as if under a spell. With calmness she did not understand, Adana said, "Take your men and leave this village." The warriors obeyed at once. They turned their horses and rode away without another word. The king's guard who saw it shouted, "Adana has saved us." The villagers came out from hiding. They lifted Adana on their shoulders and sang her name. That day, the girl who once felt invisible became their heroine. News reached the king. Moved by her beauty and bravery, he gave Adana and her mother a fine house filled with luxuries they had never known. Adana's life had changed forever. But deep in her heart, she did not yet know that this was only the beginning of her journey. From that day forward, Adana's life was never the same. Just like that, she became the subject of every conversation in the village. People whispered about her beauty, her courage, and the strange charm that seemed to surround her. Wherever she went, eyes followed her. Every man she passed felt drawn to her. Every woman admired or envied her, and children wanted to touch her dress. With the necklace shining on her neck, Adana soon realized she could make anyone do whatever she wanted. Men fell deeply for her with just one glance. Sellers gave her goods for free. Neighbors ran to obey her smallest request. For the first time in her life, Adana was noticed. She enjoyed the attention, the respect, and the power. Yet deep inside she knew one thing. This necklace was not hers to keep. One day she would have to return it, but that day never came, because Adana did not want to let go. One bright afternoon, as she walked through the village, two women appeared before her. They were unlike any women she had ever seen, tall, graceful, and breathtakingly beautiful. Around their necks hung necklaces exactly like hers, glowing with the same light. They looked at Adana with stern eyes. "Adana," one of them said, "why do you refuse to return what belongs to our sister?" Confused, Adana asked, "Who is your sister?" The second woman stepped forward. "This necklace belongs to Malika, daughter and sovereign of the waters. You must return it today, or we will flood this village and everyone in it." Fear gripped Adana's heart. She shook her head. I didn't know it was hers. Please, I meant no harm. Enough, the women said firmly. Come with us. They took her to the river. The water rippled, glowing faintly, and there on the shore sat a mermaid more radiant than anything Adana had ever seen. Her hair shimmered like the night sky, her tail sparkled with silver, and her eyes were filled with power. So it is you, Malika said, her voice calm but sharp. You are the one who has stopped me from entering the world above. Adana bowed her head. Her voice trembled. I did not know. I found the necklace and wore it. Here. Take it back. With shaky hands, she began to unclasp the necklace. For a moment, her heart felt light, as if she was free from a heavy burden. But then she paused. She remembered the silence that had stopped the warriors. She remembered the way the villagers lifted her high, the respect in the king's eyes, and the way everyone obeyed her. Without the necklace, she would become invisible again. She would go back to being no one. A fire of greed and fear rose inside her. She clutched the necklace tighter. No, Adana whispered. I cannot let it go. Malika reached forward. It does not belong to you. They both pulled at it, Adana holding on with desperate strength, Malika pulling with calm power. The necklace strained between them, glowing brighter and brighter until, with a sharp crack, it shattered into pieces. The waters roared. The sky darkened. The two beautiful women screamed, their voices mixing with the storm. Adana felt the ground shake beneath her. Her eyes grew heavy, and she fell into darkness. When she opened her eyes, she found herself in a strange place. Around her were strong bars made of bones, set in neat rows like the walls of a cage. Water shimmered all around, yet she was breathing as if she were still on land. Adana touched her neck in confusion. How am I alive down here? She thought. From a distance, a shadow moved closer. It was Malika. Her long hair floated like dark waves, and her crown of coral glowed faintly in the water. She looked at Adana with cold eyes. You should have returned what was not yours, Malika said. Her voice echoed like a song, but it was sharp with anger. Adana's lips trembled. Please, let me go. I meant no harm. Malika raised her hand, silencing her. Your greed has brought you here. You will remain in this cage. With your tears, your pain, and your sorrow, I will craft a new necklace to replace the one you destroyed. Adana felt fear rush through her body. Her heart sank. She realized she was truly trapped beneath the waters. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Adana sat in her cage, staring at the endless water that surrounded her. Sometimes fish swam by, looking at her with curious eyes. Sometimes she heard the distant voices of mermaids singing, their songs both beautiful and haunting. Regret filled her heart. If only she had let go of the necklace. If only she had not held on. Now she was far from her mother, far from her village, far from the world she knew. But one thing remained the same. Necklace had given her power, and she still longed for it. A tall merman guarded her cage. He was strong, with broad shoulders and shimmering scales. His face was calm, almost unreadable. Adana watched him for days, and one evening she tried to speak. You, she said softly, leaning forward. Do you not see me? Am I not beautiful? The merman turned his head slightly but did not answer. Adana tried again. I could make you mine. All you have to do is open this cage, don't you want me? For a long moment he stood in silence. Then with a slow, steady voice he said, Beauty comes from within. The allure of false attraction leads only to a cage like yours. His words struck her deeply. For the first time, Adana had no reply. She sat back in her cage, stunned. Alone in the silence, she thought about what he said. For the first time in her life, she began to question herself. Days continued to pass in silence. Adana often sat in her cage thinking of her mother, her village, and the words of the guard who always stood watch. She did not know why, but she began to long for his company. One morning, as she sat quietly, the guard approached. In his hand was a necklace made of shining stones. Wear this, he said. It will allow you to breathe more freely in the water. You can go anywhere. Adana looked at him with surprise. Why are you helping me? The guard did not answer. Instead, he opened the cage and helped her put on the necklace. Then he took her hand gently, and together they swam out into the open sea. The water felt different with him, strong, yet safe. His fins moved with power as they glided past glowing caves and reefs filled with life. Schools of fish swirled around them like silver ribbons. Coral shone with colors brighter than she had ever seen. Flowers moved with the current like dancers. Adana's eyes widened with wonder. She laughed, reaching out to touch the shining corals. "This is beautiful," she whispered. The guard finally spoke. "I am Ikenna." Adana smiled. "Thank you, Ikenna, for this." From that day, things changed. Whenever they could, Ikenna returned to her cage and took her out into the sea. They visited coral gardens, caves that glowed with light, and places where the water shimmered like glass. Adana found herself telling him stories of her village, her dreams, and her fears. Slowly, the walls around her heart broke down. And Ikenna, though quiet at first, began to open up too. He told her about the duties of a Triton guard, the weight of obedience, and the loneliness of silence. They became close, closer than either of them expected. One evening, as they floated near a reef where golden fish circled them, Adana placed her hand on his. "Ikenna," she whispered, "I love you." For a moment he said nothing. Then he looked into her eyes and replied softly, "And I love you too." From then on, their secret companionship blossomed into forbidden love. They spent many days sneaking away, declaring their feelings, and swimming together as if the sea itself belonged to them. But nothing stays hidden forever. Malika, the queen of the waters, noticed their closeness. She said nothing, but her silence carried a weight Adana could feel. One night, Ikenna came to her in haste. His face was troubled. "They plan to send you to the howling depths," he said. "It is a place no one ever returns from." Adana's heart filled with fear. "Then what shall we do?" she whispered. Ikenna looked around, then unlocked her cage. "I cannot watch them destroy you. Come." He carried her swiftly through the waters until they reached the riverbank above. He placed her gently on the sand. "You are free now," he said firmly. Tears filled Adana's eyes. "Come with me. Please, do not leave me alone." Ikenna shook his head. "Not yet. I must ensure your safety first." Adana clung to him desperately, but before she could say more, dark shapes rose from the water. Triton soldiers burst forth, seizing Ikenna. "No!" Adana screamed. "Don't take him, please!" But they dragged him back into the depths as he shouted, "Live, Adana, be safe!" She fell to the ground weeping as the river grew quiet once again. She sat by the riverbank for a long time, her cries breaking the silence of the night. She called Ikenna's name again and again, but only the sound of rushing water answered her. She wept until her strength failed. At dawn, villagers passing by found her. Her face was wet with tears, her clothes heavy with river water. They rushed to her, asking what had happened. "They took him," Adana cried. "The Triton soldiers, they dragged Ikenna away. He is under the water." The people looked at her with pity. Some shook their heads. "Poor girl," one whispered. "She has lost her mind," another said. Even when she tried to explain about the necklace, the mermaids, and Malika, they only looked at her as if she were mad. Her mother hurried to her side, wrapping her arms around her. "Enough, Adana," she whispered firmly. "Stop speaking of these things. People will think you are cursed." That same day, her mother took her far away from the river, hoping she would never return. Months passed. Adana tried to live quietly, but she could not forget Ikenna. Every night his face came to her in dreams. Every day her heart longed for him. Then one morning, she noticed her body changing. Her hands rested often on her stomach, and soon she knew the truth. She was with child. Fear and joy mixed inside her. She was happy because it was Ikenna's child, but she was scared because she did not know what it meant to carry the child of a merman. Still, she loved the life growing inside her. "You are my hope," she whispered, smiling through her tears. One night, when the moon was high and the world was quiet, Adana could no longer hold back. She slipped away from her mother's house and ran toward the river. Her heart beat fast as she called into the night air, Ikenna, Malika, please, hear me. Her voice echoed across the water, but no reply came. Desperate, she took the small breathing necklace Ikenna had once given her. With trembling hands, she clasped it around her neck and dove into the river. The water closed over her head, but she did not drown. She breathed easily, the necklace glowing faintly against her chest. She swam deeper, calling Ikenna's name. Suddenly, strong hands grabbed her arm. Another Triton appeared, his eyes fierce. Without a word, he dragged her into the depths. The water grew darker and heavier until finally, she was thrown before a great hall lit by shining shells. There sat Queen Malika, with her council gathered around her. Malika's eyes narrowed as she stared at Adana. Her voice was sharp. You dare return to me, after stealing my necklace, after shattering what was precious to me. And now you walk back into my court as if you belong here. Tell me, girl, what gives you the audacity to return? Adana fell to her knees. Her hands clutched her belly as tears filled her eyes. I came back because I carry Ikenna's child, she cried. Please, Queen Malika, I beg you, do not harm him. I am pregnant with his child. The hall grew silent. Malika's eyes widened in shock. Murmurs filled the water as the council turned to one another. The queen's eyes turned cold as stone. She leaned forward on her throne, her voice sharp like the edge of a blade. Ikenna has been sent to the howling depths, Malika said. He will never return. You will never see him again. Adana's heart broke. She screamed in pain, her voice echoing through the waters. No, please don't say that. Let me see him. I beg you. But Malika waved her hand. Enough. Get her out of my sight. Two guards seized Adana by the arms and dragged her through the dark waters. She kicked and struggled, but their grip was too strong. They carried her to the edge of a vast abyss, a swirling darkness that pulled everything into it. The water spun like a storm, deep and endless. Throw her in, one guard said. Adana's eyes widened. She tried to shout, but the current pulled her down. She fell headfirst into the darkness, spinning and turning as the waters swallowed her whole. Then, silence. Adana opened her eyes slowly. She was no longer falling. Instead, she was lying on a sandy shore. Above her stretched a strange sky, and before her was a sea that seemed to stretch forever. Confused, she sat up. Her hands shook. How am I alive? Where am I? A shadow moved closer. It was a woman smiling gently. But what shocked Adana most was that this woman had legs, not a tail. You are not a mermaid, Adana whispered. Who are you? How did I end up here? The woman knelt beside her. My name is Nerissa, she said softly, and I saved you from the depths. Adana blinked. But how? Where did you come from? Nerissa looked out toward the endless sea before answering. Long ago, we were called the Cerise. We were people of the land, but we lived in harmony with the sea. We ruled alongside the sea people. Together we shared knowledge, treasures, and peace. But war broke out. The sea people grew angry with the way the world above disturbed their waters. The balance between us was broken. The pillar of balance which kept both our worlds safe was destroyed. That day, the screaming depths were born, a darkness that swallows all things. Our island fell. Our people sank. And yet we did not die. She turned to Adana, her eyes filled with quiet sorrow. It was the pillar of light and life, held by the Queen, that kept us alive all these years. Without it, we would have been lost forever. Adana listened in silence, her mind heavy with wonder and fear. So you are humans? Humans living beneath the sea? Nerissa nodded. Yes. And now you are here with us. Your arrival is no accident. I saw you falling into the depths, and I could not let you be swallowed. So I brought you here. Adana held her stomach, where her unborn child rested. She looked at Nerissa with wide eyes. But why me? Nerissa's gaze grew soft. Because your story is not yet finished. There is a reason you are here, Adana, a reason far greater than you know. Adana sat on the sandy shore, her body weak, her heart heavy. She looked at Nerissa with tearful eyes. I don't care about kingdoms or stories, Adana whispered. I only want to see him. Please, I only want to see Ikenna. Nerissa's face grew thoughtful. She tilted her head, her eyes narrowing as if she was remembering something long forgotten. Then she gasped softly. "The prophecy," she murmured. "It all makes sense now." Adana looked up in confusion. "What prophecy?" Nerissa placed a hand gently on Adana's shoulder. "You, Adana, are the fulfillment of prophecy. A child of both water and earth grows inside you. Through you, the balance that was broken long ago can be restored." Adana shook her head, too weary to understand. "All I want is Ikenna. Please, take me to him." Nerissa gave a slow nod. "I will. But first you must stand before the Queen of Light and Life. Only she can decide what comes next." They walked together through glowing streets paved with white sand. Crystal roofs sparkled above, and people dressed in shining stones whispered as Adana passed. Her heart pounded with fear and wonder. At last, they reached a palace wrapped in light. Inside, the air shimmered like gold. At the far end, upon a high throne, sat the Queen of Light and Life. Her crown was made of diamonds, her breastplate of gold, and in her hand she held a shining trident. Her presence filled the room with power and calm. The Queen looked at Adana and smiled faintly. "Welcome, redeemed daughter. You carry the chosen child." At those words, Adana's knees grew weak. She fell to the ground, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Please," she cried, "I beg you, let Ikenna live. Do not harm him. He is all I have." The Queen's smile faded. For a moment, silence filled the hall. Then she spoke, her voice steady and heavy with meaning. "For the seed to reign, the planter must die." Adana's heart froze. Her eyes widened. She looked up in fear and confusion. "What? What does that mean? Are you saying Ikenna must die?" The Queen's eyes glistened with sorrow, but her words did not change. "It is the way of the prophecy." Adana trembled on the cold floor of the Queen's hall. Her heart raced with fear as the Queen's words echoed in her ears. "For the seed to reign, the planter must die." She shook her head, tears spilling down her face. "No, please, not Ikenna. Spare him. Let him live. I beg you." But the Queen of Light and Life said nothing. Her silence was heavier than words. Soon, guards came and led Adana away. They took her through a dark tunnel that smelled of death and sorrow. When they reached the end, Adana's eyes widened. Bones and broken skulls lay scattered on the floor. In the middle of the cave, behind rough bars, stood Ikenna. "Ikenna!" Adana cried, rushing to the bars. His eyes lifted, weary but full of longing. "Adana, is it truly you?" "Yes," she whispered, holding the bars. "It is me, and I carry your child." Ikenna's face broke into tears. He touched her hands through the bars. "Our child?" Adana nodded, smiling through her sobs. "Yes. You are going to be a father." He wept openly, pressing his forehead against the bars. "Then I have hope again." Adana tightened her grip. "I will not let them take you from me. I will find a way. We will live together, as a family." In the days that followed, Adana thought of a plan. She noticed that one guard always carried the key to Ikenna's prison. If she could trick him, she could take it. So one evening she clutched her stomach and cried out in pain. "Help me, my belly, my baby, I think it's coming," she shouted. The guard rushed forward. As he leaned close, Adana reached for the keys, but before she could slip them away, sharp pain shot through her body. She gasped. This was no longer an act. Her water broke. She fell to the ground, screaming in real labor. Servants carried her to a chamber. Hours of pain followed until at last a baby's cry filled the room. Adana held her newborn son against her chest, her heart swelling with both joy and fear. "My son," she whispered, "my little one." That night, when all was quiet, Adana wrapped the child close and hurried back to Ikenna's prison. Her face was pale with weakness, but her eyes were determined. "Ikenna," she whispered through tears, "I did it. I have the keys. We must go now." The lock clicked open, and Ikenna stepped out. He held the baby carefully, cradling him with tender strength. Then, closing his eyes, he muttered an ancient word. Light shone around his tail, and in moments it transformed into legs. Ikenna smiled faintly, For you, for us. Together, clutching their son, they fled through the glowing halls. Alarm bells rang, voices shouted, but they did not stop. At last, the sea was before them. Freedom was close. But behind them came soldiers. Arrows flew through the water like sharp streaks of death. One arrow sped straight toward Ikenna. Without thinking, Adana pushed him aside. The arrow struck her instead. She gasped, falling into his arms, blood darkening the water around them. Ikenna, she whispered weakly. Her hand touched his cheek. Run. I will always love you. Keep our child safe. Her voice broke. Her eyes fluttered closed. Ikenna screamed her name, his tears mixing with the sea as he held her limp body close. The baby cried too, his tiny voice rising above the sound of battle. Blood floated in the water and the sound of her last words rang in his ears. The baby cried loudly, his voice rising above the chaos. Then, as if the child's cries carried power, the waters began to stir. Strong winds rose, scattering the guards and blocking their way. The depths themselves seemed to shield Ikenna and the newborn. In that moment, the current lifted them. He clutched the child tightly, tears running down his face as the waters carried them upward. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying on the riverbank of an old village. Adana's voice was gone forever, but her spirit lingered in the cries of their son. Ikenna looked at the boy, his small hands waving, his eyes like Adana's. He whispered softly, "You will be called Zankibu," meaning blood of the sea. With trembling lips, he kissed the child's forehead. "I vow never to return to that river. You will grow safe, far from its call." 18 years passed. Zankibu, or Zan as he was called, grew into a strong young man. His shoulders were broad, his steps steady, but though he was strong, the people around him did not understand him. He had unusual gifts. Sometimes his voice carried farther than it should. Sometimes he seemed to hear whispers no one else heard. The other youths mocked him, calling him strange, pushing him aside. Zan bore their laughter in silence, but deep in his heart, questions grew. At night, he dreamed the same dreams again and again. A crown gleaming in the dark, a battlefield drowned in silence, a deep, low hum rising from an endless abyss. He would wake in sweat, his heart pounding, his spirit restless. Ikenna noticed the change in his son. One evening, as they sat outside their small house, Ikenna placed a hand on Zan's shoulder. "Listen to me, my son," he said firmly. "Never go near the river. Promise me. That place is not for you." Zan lowered his head, silent. He wanted to obey, but the river's call grew stronger with each passing day, and deep inside, he knew his destiny was waiting for him there. Zan grew into manhood with strength in his body and questions in his heart. Though he obeyed his father and stayed away from the river, others noticed. His friends often teased him, saying he feared the water. One hot afternoon, a group of them decided to play a cruel prank. "Let's see what happens if he touches the river," one whispered. "It will be fun," another laughed. They blindfolded Zan, telling him it was only a game. Before he could resist, they dragged him to the river's edge and pushed him in. The water closed over his head. At once the river stirred. From beneath the waves, mermaid warriors rose, their eyes sharp, their spears ready. The boys on the bank screamed in terror. They turned and ran as fast as their legs could carry them, leaving Zan behind. But before the warriors could reach him, the water beneath Zan began to swirl. A deep hum rose from the depths, low and powerful, shaking the river itself. The humming depths opened like a mouth, and in a rush, Zan was swallowed into the darkness. When he opened his eyes again, he was lying on a shore unlike any he had ever seen. The sky above glowed faintly, and the sea before him sparkled with strange colors. A figure stood nearby, a woman, tall and calm, her face radiant. She smiled and spoke softly. "Our king has arrived." Zan struggled to his feet, confused and afraid, but the woman, Nerissa, guardian of the sea, extended her hand. "Come," she said. He followed her through winding paths until they entered a city unlike anything on earth. Houses gleamed with roofs made of crystal.
Streets were paved with soft white sand that shone like pearls. Trees with giant leaves glowed in colors of gold and green, lighting their way. Zan's eyes widened in awe. Where am I?" he whispered.
"You are home," Nerissa replied, "and your story has just begun." Nerissa led Zan through the shining city until they reached a great palace. Its walls glowed with light, and its gates were guarded by tall figures with spears of gold. Inside, the halls sparkled with crystal. The air felt alive, as if the walls themselves carried power. Zan's heart pounded as he was taken forward. Then, in the center of the hall, he saw her. A woman stood there, older now but still beautiful. Her eyes were soft, her face familiar. She turned, and at once tears filled her eyes. "Adana," Nerissa whispered. Zan froze. His breath caught. The woman stepped forward slowly, her hand shaking. "My son," she whispered. Zan's eyes widened. He had only seen her face in dreams, but now it was real. "Mother?" he asked, his voice breaking. Adana nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Zan held her close, unable to speak as tears fell freely from his own eyes. "I thought I had lost you forever," Adana wept. "I thought you were gone," Zan whispered. They held each other for a long time, their cries echoing softly through the palace. At last, Adana pulled back and cupped his face. "The night we were separated," she said through tears. "I thought I would die. But the Queen of Light and Life saved me. She preserved me here in this realm, kept me alive all these years. For 18 years I have waited, hoping to see you again." Zan's eyes filled with wonder. "So that is how you survived?" Adana nodded, kissing his forehead. "Yes, my son. And now you are here. My heart is whole again." At that moment, guards entered and led them toward the throne room. The court of the Queen of Light and Life was filled with brilliance. The queen sat high on her throne, wearing her crown of diamonds and holding her shining trident. Her daughters stood beside her, their gowns flowing like water. The queen's voice filled the hall as she looked at Zan. "This is the one we have waited for. Zan, son of Adana, born of both water and earth. He is the prophesied ruler who will raise the kingdom of Serois to the surface." The people in the hall bowed their heads, murmuring in awe. The queen's eyes gleamed. "It is not enough for him to rule. He shall also be joined to us by marriage. Zan will wed one of my daughters." Zan's heart raced. His mother's hand squeezed his arm. He looked at the queen, both amazed and afraid. His life had changed in a moment, and the weight of destiny pressed heavily upon him. Adana held her son's hand tightly as they stood before the Queen of Light and Life. Her heart was full of both joy and fear. She bowed low and pleaded, her voice breaking. "Great Queen, I beg you, please give us time. My son has only just arrived. He needs to understand who he is, to know the truth of his destiny. Do not rush him." But the queen's face remained firm. Her voice echoed through the hall. "The prophecy waits for no one. The coronation must take place soon. He will be crowned, and the kingdom of Serois shall rise again." Adana's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to speak again, but before she could, the sound of footsteps filled the chamber. A guard entered quickly and bowed. "Your Majesty, Queen Malika approaches." The hall grew tense. Moments later, Malika, the sovereign of the waters, swept in with her dark presence. Her hair flowed like black waves and her eyes burned with fire. Behind her, guards dragged a man in chains. Adana gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Zan's eyes widened. It was Ikenna. His face was weary, his arms bound, but his spirit was unbroken. Malika pushed him forward with a cruel smile. "Here he is," she said, "your beloved, the one you thought safe." Adana's knees trembled. "No. How? How did you capture him?" A guard spoke quickly. "The boys who threw Zan into the river returned home in fear. They confessed what they had done. When Ikenna heard, he left his work and ran to the sea to save his son. But Queen Malika was waiting. She seized him before he could reach the depths." Adana clutched Zan's arm in horror. Zan's heart burned with anger and sorrow as he saw his father, beaten but standing tall. Malika stepped closer, her voice cold as stone. Listen carefully. If Zan renounces the throne, I will spare your father, but if he claims it, Ikenna will die. She raised her hand, and the guards tightened their hold on him. Choose, Malika demanded. Renounce the throne, or watch your father perish before your eyes. The hall grew silent after Malika's demand. The weight of her words pressed down on everyone. Zan's chest rose and fell as he looked at his father in chains, then at the queen's fierce eyes. Adana, trembling and in tears, clutched her son's hand. She leaned close and whispered, "Trust your heart, my son." Zan's eyes burned with confusion. His heart beat fast. He wanted to protect his father, but he could also feel something deep inside him stirring, something he did not understand. One of Malika's soldiers stepped forward, raising his spear. He pointed it at Zan, ready to strike. But before the weapon could touch him, the ground beneath them began to shake. A low hum filled the hall, deep and powerful, echoing through the waters like thunder. The humming depths had awakened. The soldier cried out as the floor beneath him split open. A dark current rose, wrapping around him like a hand. In an instant, he was dragged down into the depths. Gasps filled the court as everyone watched in terror. Moments later, the soldier's lifeless body was thrown back out, landing before them. The sea folk trembled. Their eyes widened in fear. Murmurs spread quickly. What power is this? Is it truly him? Even Malika stepped back, shock flashing across her face. Adana covered her mouth in awe, tears still flowing, but her heart swelling with pride. Zan himself stood frozen, staring at his hands. His whole body shook. He whispered to himself, What did I just do? The court grew silent again, but this time with reverence and fear. Everyone now knew that Zan carried a power beyond anything they had ever seen. The hall remained quiet, the memory of the soldier's death heavy in everyone's hearts. The sea folk looked at Zan with both fear and awe. Zan took a slow breath. His hands still shook, but he lifted his head with calmness. He looked at Malika, not with anger, but with strength. Enough, he said firmly. His voice carried through the hall. We will not repay violence with violence. Malika's eyes narrowed. You dare to speak so, after all that has happened? Zan nodded. Yes, because vengeance only brings more pain. You separated my parents. You brought sorrow and death. Did it make you stronger? No, it only created more trouble for all of us. The hall grew still. His words struck like arrows, sinking into every heart. Even Adana, standing behind him, wept silently as she listened to her son's wisdom. Zan stepped closer, his voice steady. Release my father. Let him go. This is the only way forward. Malika looked at him, her lips trembling, her pride wrestling with the truth in his words. For a long moment no one spoke. At last she lowered her hand. Her voice, though bitter, was clear. Very well. Take him. The guards released Ikenna from his chains. He stumbled forward, weak but alive. Tears filled Adana's eyes as she ran to him, clutching his arm. Zan's chest rose with relief as he embraced them both. Malika turned away in silence, her pride wounded. Adana held Ikenna close, tears of relief streaming down her face. She turned toward her son, ready to thank him for his courage. But then something strange happened. Zan closed his eyes, and without knowing why, he began to hum. The sound was soft at first, a melody unknown even to him. It rose gently, echoing through the great hall, filling every corner with a deep, powerful rhythm. The sea folk gasped. They recognized it, the forbidden melody, the song of the Pillar of Balance. One by one their voices joined in, first in whispers, then louder, until the whole court was humming with him. The walls shook, the floors trembled, the water itself seemed to sing. Darkness suddenly swept over the realm. The humming depths opened, pulling at the palace, the streets, and the towers. For a moment it seemed all would be lost. But then light broke through. A warm golden light poured down, cutting through the darkness. The waters parted, and the kingdom of Serui began to rise. Slowly, the city lifted upward, carried by the power of the melody. Crystal roofs sparkled in the sun. White sand streets glowed. Trees and coral shimmered as they broke through the surface of the sea. The kingdom of Serui now stood in the sunlight, lifted from the depths after centuries of darkness. Its crystal roofs sparkled like stars, its white sand streets gleamed, and the voices of its people filled the air with songs of joy. At the center of it all was Zan. The people bowed low before him, calling out his name with reverence. Our king, the child of love and prophecy. Zan stood tall, though his heart still trembled with awe. He had not sought greatness, yet destiny had found him. His eyes searched the crowd until they fell upon his parents. Ikenna, no longer bound in chains, no longer weak from captivity, broke into a run. His legs carried him with strength as he rushed to Adana. "Adana," he cried. She turned, her face radiant with tears. They met in the middle of the palace court and held each other tightly. Years of pain, sorrow, and separation melted away in that one embrace. "You are alive," Ikenna whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "I thought I had lost you forever." Adana smiled through her tears. "It was the Queen of Light and Life who preserved me. For 18 years I lived with the hope that I would see you again, and now here you are, and our son stands as king." They turned together, watching Zan as he stood before the throne. Pride filled their hearts. Pride not just for his crown, but for his courage, his mercy, and his strength of heart. The Queen of Light and Life rose from her throne. Beside her stood Malika, her face still proud, though quieter now. For the first time, the two queens stood side by side. They each carried a crown. One was woven from coral and diamonds, the other from gold and pearl. Together, they stepped forward. "Zan," the Queen of Light declared, her voice carrying across the court, "you are the bridge between two worlds, child of water and earth. Through you, balance is restored." Malika spoke next, her voice steady, though softer than before. "You are the son of the one I sought to destroy, yet you have chosen mercy. For this, you have earned the right to rule." Both queens lifted the crowns and placed them gently upon Zan's head. The court erupted in cheers. "Long live Zan, king of Seruis." That day, stories began to spread. In the villages on land, whispers rose of a kingdom reborn. Among the sea folk, tales were told of a young man who tamed the depths with a song. And in every story, Adana's name was spoken. Some called her a seductress, saying it was her greed for the necklace that began the tale. Others called her a savior, the woman who bore the child of prophecy and endured suffering for the sake of love. But all agreed on one truth. She was forever tied to the liberation of Serui, the kingdom once lost, now reborn. On the balcony of the palace, Adana and Ikenna stood hand in hand, watching their son crowned before the cheering people. Adana leaned against Ikenna's shoulder, her heart finally at peace. "He is our gift," she whispered. "Our hope," Ikenna replied. Together they watched Zan, the child of both water and earth, take his place as king, the living proof of their love, their sacrifice, and their destiny. And as the sun set over the shining city, Adana thought back to the night by the river, when her curious hands had lifted a glowing necklace of shells. A necklace that had changed everything. Because that was how it all began.